Welcome to the very first episode of the new AJ and RJ Show podcast edition. I am RJ Stone.
I'm AJ Motts.
That's right. And in this series, brought to you by Sweet Death Entertainment, we're going to kind of do something a little bit different, whereas we're going to introduce elements of what we used to do on our radio show back at knac.com and other various places that we were at separate joints at the same time, or not at the same time, whatever you want to say. And also introduce elements of foundational rock and roll, metal, hard rock, things like that. And all of these bands and artists that we're going to talk about have had an influence on us, as well as God knows how many other people. Right?
Countless musicians, fans, other, the world.
Everybody around the world.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're going to be doing here is kind of giving you a quote-unquote abridged version of what this stuff is. And we came up with a title for this segment. It's going to be a segment, right? And it's called Metal Digest.
Mm-hmm. And that's the disclaimer right there. It's Metal Digest. So we're not going to go too deep into birth dates and death dates and brisses and anniversaries and all the little minutia. We're just going to give you a nice overview. We're going to go a little deeper into certain areas, gloss over a little other areas, but overall, hopefully it's enough for you to want to explore a little more after we're all said and done.
That's right. Now, today we're going to kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive into this legendary band. And as AJ very loosely referenced, we figured that we would start with one of the founding members. And it's not who you think it is. No. Because you're thinking, all right, these guys got to be starting with Black Sabbath.
Yeah, of course.
But you would be wrong. Okay. No, who are we going with?
We are going to start with Deep Purple.
That's right.
Because there's a lot to talk about.
There is.
So many band members. So many albums. So much time has passed. And who knows much longer it's going to go.
And you and I have both been around the earth 50 or so times, maybe a couple more years than that.
Right.
And these guys have been around 50 or so times.
Just as a band.
Yeah. So why not? So that's what we're going to start with. So why don't you run through who the current lineup is in this legendary band?
The current lineup consists of Ian Pace on drums, Roger Glover on bass, Ian Gillan on vocals, Steve Morse on guitars, and Don Airey on the keyboards.
Now the question is...
What is the question?
How did they all get there?
Well, let me tell you a little story, RJ.
Okay, thank you, AJ.
Starts back in 1968.
Does it really?
With John Lord, Ian Pace, Richie Blackmore, Rod Evans, and a guy by the name of Nick Simper on the bass.
Yes.
So that is the very first original lineup of Deep Purple.
As it stands, as it's been noted.
So how deep into the pink are we going to go with Purple?
We're going to go deep into the purple.
Middle finger deep?
Middle finger deep.
We'll cut that out.
Or we won't. That goes in a
Depends on how I feel when we're editing.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Continue.
So the band was basically a business decision when they first started out. They were going to have this rotating band member list, and you come in for a little while, you write, you play, you record, you leave, somebody else comes in, and it's this revolving door of musicians in this band, and they were going to call it Roundabout.
But that name was already taken by a Yes To.
Yes.
No.
And
yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Who?
I never heard of them.
That's a different band.
Yeah. I think they were more alternative band.
These are the jokes, folks.
But it all started with John Lord on his Hammond organ.
That's right.
Hammond organ, not hand-on organ.
You said it, not me. Send your cards and letters too.
So they recruited band members from different projects throughout Europe, including Nick Simper and Carlo Little on bass and drums, respectively. They suggested Richie Blackmore, who was an up-and-coming session guitarist at the time.
Yeah. And he falls in line with like Page, Jeff Beck, Clapton, all of those guys.
All just making
they rotated
a name
in and
for
out.
themselves. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and it was he and Lord that started recruiting other members and kept Simper on bass, but booted Carlo for another drummer named Bobby Woodman. with the foundation of Blackmore, Lord, Simper, and Woodman, they started rehearsing and auditioning singers. And they settled on Rod Evans.
And that's where a lot of people get confused. Everybody thinks that Ian Gillan was the original lead singer.
Yep.
Nope, there was a guy before him, just like in other bands that we love, and Maiden and Priest and all these other bands. There was that one guy who came first.
Yeah, and then got replaced, and the band goes on to success, and that guy's like, damn it.
Working in a lumberyard somewhere.
Evans just so happened to have a drummer in mind named Ian Pace, and Pace went on to replace Woodman, and then the first official lineup was done. And
I'm all ears. I'm all ears, but I do have a question.
Yes.
Who came up with the name Deep Purple? Do you know who that is?
Is it in our notes?
It might be.
I don't know. Tell me.
No, you tell me. No, I think it was Blackmore's grandmother. It's an old song from back in the 30s, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is now with the way that everybody can stream music and go and find anything pretty much instantly, I encourage you to go and find that tune that is referenced called Deep Purple, right?
Yeah, from a guy named Peter DeRose.
Yes.
Back from 1933.
That's right.
So going really old school on the name reference there. So the first success off their debut album, Shades of Purple, came with their tune Hush, which is a cover tune and hit number 4 on the Billboard's Hot 100. And their second album produced another hit. Again, it came in the form of a cover tune, and this one was Kentucky Woman, a Neil Diamond tune. That's all moderate success.
Now, here's a question. You're in this band, this up-and-coming band. You're starting to get a string of hits, and your stuff's being written by a pop guy, right? You're doing cover tunes. So the question is, do you continue with the same formula? Or do you say, all right, time to get out on our own and do our own stuff and really let's see if we can make our own hits? And go ahead.
I was just going to say, they're writing 2 albums now, and both their hits have been cover tunes.
Yeah.
So, what do you do?
Yeah, but that's what happened a lot back in the 50s and 60s. Bands went out and just basically recorded other people's songs. There was and then there exist today, people they're writers. That's what they do because they can't sing or they don't look good on stage. Hence that's why we're in radio.
Yeah.
Right? But here's the side note. Really quick. What's your favorite cover tune?
Well, I like when bands take a cover tune and make it their own. Not just do a note-for-note cover. Such as, not that they're bad at it, they're excellent. It's what they do. Steel Panther, they do note-for-note covers. But that's their forte. That's what they do, and they're amazing at it.
Yes, they are.
And they just did a Van Halen, a few Van Halen tunes.
In honor of Eddie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the band that's doing it the best these days, not just because of one particular song, but a string of cover tunes, is Disturbed.
Yes.
They make it their own. Sound of Silence, I think it's got 1 billion views on YouTube, plus Land of Confusion and Shout, and they just make it their own style.
And that's what makes it unique. Now,
and what about you?
In my opinion, well, it's not really an opinion. The first, I'd say, cover tune that I realized was not their own by one of my favorite artists, because it's right at the time when I was really starting to get into music, is when Iron Maiden released Cross-Eyed Mary, which was off of Peace of Mind. And I just remember hearing it because, you get all the singles and picture disc and all this fun stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, I recognize that. You're a kid, so you don't know the name of it. It's like, wait a minute, that sounds like Jethro Tull, right? Lo and behold, that's who it was. So Maiden's done a slew of cover tunes, which are always fun, as they do for B-sides. But I also like Queensryche's version of Scarborough Fair.
Yes.
I just thought Jeff did a really haunting version of that tune.
And oddly enough, I actually just listened to that 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago.
Did you really?
Yeah. I was like, I haven't heard that in a while. Let me go check that one out again.
Yeah, he pulls it off.
Yeah, but my actually going back to first exposure to cover tunes and not really knowing at first that it was for me 2000 Man.
Yes. Okay.
You listen to it because as a kid you're the fan of Ace because he's the guitar player and everything, and you listen for his songs on the albums, and he did a song called 2000 Man, not realizing until really years later it was a cover tune
from the Stones.
Yeah. So that was my first exposure to a favorite band, a big band doing a cover tune.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it's a great song, And technically, here's a question. What if, again, on cover tunes, what if a band or three bands record the same song in the same year, written by the same artist.
I would just want to hide from that situation.
Really? Go with what your heart thinks. Okay. Moving on. So at this point, sorry, we talk a lot. So at this point, the band releases their third album, right? Aptly titled Deep Purple, which would be the last of this original lineup, and we use that term a little loosely. And this was officially like the end of the Mark I lineup. Now, the Mark II lineup, because take notes, okay? This is when we're going to start talking about Ian Gillan and Roger Glover.
Yes.
So you see where we're going here, right? So, as could be expected, the band started to want to go in a heavier direction, and a couple guys in the band said, well, that's not why we got in the band. We want to keep this totally blues-based. Semper and Evans were like, no, whatever you're going to do. It's like, well, guess what? You're out.
Yep.
Right? Just
gotta change with the times and go with where the kind of the music is going. If you want to be in this type of band with revolving band members, and if these guys got in there knowing that in the beginning, they had to expect anybody is on the chopping block at any given time.
Exactly. And, you know, singers and bass players are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
So, they're out. Yeah. So, after searching...
Send your letters to RJ Stone.
Okay. Hey, dude, look on the wall. I'm a bass player. I can say that, right? We're a dime a dozen. So, after chatting with a bunch of different musicians, they landed on Ian Gillan and Roger Glover. So, now, this is the classic lineup of Deep Purple, you know, what everybody thinks of.
Yeah, the most recognizable, the one that everybody thinks of when they think of Deep Purple.
Yes, and this is the band that went on to have, or this lineup, Mark II lineup, had the greatest success in the band. Yep. Okay, now, a couple of tunes that you might be familiar with. Now, we're not going to go into all the tunes because there's just way too many. But Black Knight, Strange Kind of Woman, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But those are the key tracks from that era, right? Little quick side note, during a U.S. tour, Ian Gillan got sick, and Roger Glover actually had to handle the singing duties at a show in Chicago. Now, the question is, does that now technically make him a vocalist for the band Deep Purple?
I say yes, because he sang for the band in an official capacity.
And I say no.
Album, concert, you know, not just in some random little thing. He actually had to perform for the band.
Okay, he had to perform.
Yeah.
I say no because there's nothing recorded that doesn't prove it existed. So right now it's just hearsay.
So no Pixar didn't exist?
Yep, no Pixar didn't exist. No video, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
So anyhow, obviously, you know, didn't last, right? So it's like, we need to get you somewhere. So anyway, of course we need to give a bit of attention to Machine Head, probably their most famous album that everybody loves, right? And this was their sixth release. So these guys have been album tour, right?
Well, back in the 70s, you would record, go on tour for 3 months, and go record and go on tour for 3 months. Yep. So you could put out 2 albums in a year.
Yep.
Like Kiss did and many others.
Exactly. Now, Machine Head, was originally supposed to be recorded at the Montreux Casino in Switzerland. Okay, but if everybody who's anybody knows the story, Smoke on the Water is about that casino burning down. And how that happened is at a Frank Zappa concert, just like it says, some idiot with a flare gun, burned the place to the ground. Yep. By the way, again, side note, because, ADD kicks in every now and then. Have you seen the Zappa documentary on that particular service offered by that particular service?
No, not yet.
Okay. Take an hour and a half, go see it. It gives you the history of Zappa and all of the influences that he's had and how he became the genius that he was. Because the guy never did drugs. He smoked a shit ton of cigarettes. Okay, but he never did drugs. We can bleep that out if we knew, right? But he never did drugs. And he's just this amazing musician. To see him writing music, it just comes out of his head. Just it's like, how the hell you do that? Okay. Now, by the way, all right, so the album was recorded in an empty hotel nearby, except for the aforementioned song, which was recorded at an empty theater. Now, you're in Switzerland. What are you going to do? Okay, you got to rent a rehearsal space, do whatever, record your album. Okay, you're in Switzerland. Who's going to care? Well, the neighbors apparently cared.
The neighbors from 5
miles away
cared.
Yeah, what the hell is it going on out there?
All echoing through the mountains.
That's right. Right. Other tunes, obviously, Space Truckin', Highway Star, Lazy. Again, Machine Head, if you don't have it, I had it on 8-track. And every other format.
I did not.
Well, there you go. I did.
But what do you do when you record an album? You go on tour.
Yes.
In this case, a multi-continent tour, as opposed to a world tour.
Mm-hmm.
Huge difference.
So let me ask you. It's the 70s. You're going on tour. Lots of things going around. Bugs, backstage, things. Lots of sharing going on.
Yeah, probably. Things happen. Certain people get backstage. Maybe certain people aren't exactly healthy.
Okay.
So Blackmore ends up getting hepatitis.
Yeah.
And no, it was not from a young Tommy Lee or Pamela Anderson.
Oh. Although Tommy would have been
Maybe,
about 16 back then? Yeah, okay. Who knows? Who knows?
Maybe. Who knows? I don't know.
Okay. So, I'm seeing a pattern here.
They returned to the road later in the year during the Japanese leg of the tour.
Okay.
I'll stick with it. That's all I'm going to say. So they ended up recording Made in Japan.
Not Made in Japan.
Yes, Made in Japan.
Okay, so Made in Japan.
Yeah, Made in Japan.
Okay.
As opposed to Made in Japan.
Got it. Again.
Got it?
These are the jokes.
Yep.
This is what we're doing.
This would turn out to be one of the best live rock performance recordings ever of all time. The band continued on with major success, but tension started rising once again, and thus bringing us to the end of the Mark II lineup.
Bummer.
Yeah.
Bummer.
But as we said at the very beginning, if you're following along in your study guides, rotating lineup.
In and out.
Let's keep going with a new lineup. And if you're in a successful band, you've toured the world multiple times over now, you had a sling of multi-million selling hits, you get in a fight with a guitarist and you quit, right?
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yeah. And that's exactly what Gillen did. And while you're at it, let's sack the bass player too. I know
Sure. See you later, Roger.
Yeah, like I said, dime a dozen, right?
Yep.
All right, so now what? Now we got to replace 2 players in the band.
Yes.
And once again, a lot of names got thrown around, some known, some not, but ultimately David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes came into play.
And one of the big names that did get thrown around was Paul Rogers.
Yes.
Right? But Paul was doing Free and was pretty successful there, and he had Bad Company, so he was kind of going back and forth.
So
Free had kind of dissolved a little bit, but
would have been more of a lateral move versus a step up.
Yeah, because he's already a superstar.
Yeah.
But you get these 2 guys. And I got to tell you, I love Coverdale and Hughes in the band. I do.
Yeah.
I think what they did was phenomenal. And it
basically
made
2 vocalists.
2 vocalists and a bass player.
Yeah.
You get 3 for the price of 2.
And there you go.
Right.
Nice.
Well, technically, Coverdale is... Well, he's in love with himself. So maybe you get 4 for the price of 2. David, we love you. And we want to have you on the show, okay? Do I need to... I got his picture. His picture's right there up on the wall.
Autographed.
Yeah. I am Whitesnake, darling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we're moving on to the Mark III lineup.
3.
And they just immediately went out on tour, playing the huge festivals. And they were well received. And then they recorded Burn.
Ugh.
Yeah. And once again, is that going back to the hepatitis thing? Burn? I don't know.
Could be. At least they didn't call it itch.
Right? Itch and burn?
Yeah, itch and burn. Burn it. I've got a burn and itch.
There you go. So once again, the album had a slew of recognizable tracks and sold well.
Because, folks, it's all about the mighty dollar, or in this case, the pound, possibly the yen, made in Japan. Right? It's about money.
However, Blackmore wasn't a huge fan of Stormbringer and actually commented publicly about it. And can you guess what's going to happen next?
I see another member going in and out.
I knew you could. Blackmore left the band this time and formed Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, which introduced the amazing Ronnie James Dio. Another episode.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we have to note up until this point, we've been sharing all this information about all these band members rotating in and out.
Yeah.
Who's the one person who stayed put the entire time?
Mr. John Lord.
Mr. John Lord. Why? Because he's the keyboardist. He just sits back, looks cool and mean and mysterious, does his thing.
Lets the drama happen around him.
That's right.
He's like the eye of the hurricane. He's just the calm and the hurricanes around him.
You're absolutely right.
All right. But back here,
Yep.
we now have some big shoes to fill in the case of Blackmore. But it's the same story, different instrument. They audition a few guitarists and see who sticks. And
no, I've heard several things about this. You know, it depends on who you ask. If you ask Blackmore, if you ask Coverdale. Yeah. But Tommy Bolin comes into fray.
Yeah, they decided to go with Tommy Bolin, and Tommy, like I said, Tommy claimed it was Blackmore. Some other people say it was Coverdale.
Whose ego needs to be stroked a little bit bigger?
Or how successful Bolin was, in your opinion, in the band. Yep. So if he was really successful, they're both going to take credit. Yep. If he wasn't successful,
it's your fault.
No, it's your fault.
No, it's your fault.
Your fault.
Nope.
Yeah.
I never wanted him.
Yeah, but can't we all just get along here?
Yes.
So now if you don't know who Tommy Bolin is, that's a podcast for another time. But just know he was an amazing session player with an impressive resume as well. A
very impressive resume indeed.
Yeah.
Bolin's influence on the band was evident, but not without its shortcomings. Why? Because this is the 70s, folks. And unfortunately, he did have a very nasty drug problem, which just sucks, right? Now, although you got to give him credit, his studio recordings were impeccable, amazing. Why? Because you over and over until you get it right?
Yeah.
However, he could not reproduce his leads, let alone Richie Blackmore's parts on tour.
Yeah.
And that creates an issue. And these guys were huge. They had huge stage shows.
Yeah.
Very comparable to Kiss, So you got to be able to get up there and perform. And he just couldn't do it.
Yeah, and if you can, like you said, take as many takes as you want in the studio to get something right. But if you can't play it once live, you're not going to be in a band very long.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, he wasn't the only one who imbibed. Glenn Hughes has
come out publicly
and said he had a pretty nasty drug habit. That's right.
He loved the devil's dandruff, as he likes to call it.
He did. But it wasn't dandruff. That's okay. But what are you going to do? Hey, folks, drugs are bad. Okay? Thank you very much. All right. So once again, we now return. Same story, new instrument. Okay. So the end came, and this is almost the end, March 15th, 1976. Are you taking notes? Follow along your study guides, kids. After a disappointing show in Liverpool, the band calls it quits. Purple are done. Okay? Even Lord said, we're done. All right? So from this point on, they all go their separate ways, venturing out into solo projects, joining established acts, and starting new projects as well. One in particular that comes to mind, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is I am a huge fan of Whitesnake. I love Whitesnake. And again, Whitesnake is very similar to Deep Purple, rotating band members. Yep. In and out. Again, that's going to be a whole other
As long as
episode.
you have Coverdale, baby, that's all you need.
I know. It's Coverdale. Interesting side note, again, I was reading an article today in Rolling Stone. They did a very lengthy interview with Rudy Sarzo, literally just the other day, and it was published today. And Rudy talks about, talking about a session player in and out, his time spent in Whitesnake. And it's a really interesting read. So if you can find that on the internet, go ahead. But we'll try to get him on the show too.
Sure.
I don't think it'll be too difficult. Anyhow, Whitesnake, and then that's when Ian Gillan started dabbling also a little bit in Sabbath, right? Boom. So that was 76.
Yeah.
It's quiet in Purple Land, right? Deep Purple has gone dark.
Yeah.
But somebody gets a brilliant idea. It's 1984. The Prodigal Sons return. Okay? All right.
Because there's more money to be made now.
Exactly.
It's the 80s.
But it's the Mach 2 lineup that comes back, right? Gillan, Glover, Pace, Lord, and Blackmore. So you got all of these guys back together in a studio. And there's video of it. I believe it was in Vermont or New Hampshire where they came to record it. Don't quote me on that yet. Well, we'll get the facts straight later. They record Perfect Strangers, which for that time, and you had the hair bands blowing up, right? Zeppelin were pretty much done because Bonham had died. You know, you had Plant who went on his own. Page was doing the firm stuff. Here comes Purple and slides in, no pun intended, with Perfect Strangers. Fantastic album said, hey, yeah, we were gone for a while.
And confirmed the chemistry of this particular lineup.
Yes.
And able to write and perform music.
Exactly. And this was the very first CD I ever purchased was Deep Purple, Perfect Strangers. And I still have it.
Yeah. I still have my first CD. I've actually bought 3 at the first time, which was Def Leppard Hysteria, Cinderella Long Cold Winter, and Ozzy No Rest for the Wicked, because my mom had just got me a little Ghetto Blaster CD player for Christmas.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
So those are my first 3. I think my next one was And Justice for All.
I had a Fisher stereo CD player. Fisher. With a real simple remote, play, fast forward, pause. Yeah. That's it. And I hooked it up to my stereo, and it worked. And I got that. And actually, the second CD I bought was a Beatles CD, not realizing it was people doing Beatles cover tunes.
Oh,
it was cover tunes again. Whoops. Yeah. And then I went out and bought Sgt. Pepper, and I cleansed everything. But the cool thing, so they're out touring on Perfect Strangers, right? Mm-hmm. The second highest grossing tour, only behind Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
For a band being gone for 8 years to come back and just, we're back here conquering the world.
To compete with an artist who is at the height of his popularity, really. Mm-hmm. You know, with what he had going on.
That was Born in the USA. Yeah. Yes, and I saw 5 of those shows. Well, four. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so folks, band goes on, release a couple more albums, including a live album, Nobody's Perfect, etc. And guess what happens? You get
Let me see if I can take a
stab at it.
In the dark. Maybe somebody quits or gets fired?
How's about people start fighting?
Oh, that's
right.
It.
And so, of course, it's Ian Gillan and Richie Blackmore at it again, right? Ian gets fired. Okay? Mm-hmm. You're out, dude. You're gone. Okay? Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because if you start thinking about the different lineups that could have, would have, should have happened, they're talking to people such as...
Because now they have some clout.
Yes.
And people want to be in the band.
Yes, that's right.
Especially after the comeback and the success. And now they can go after all the big names.
And the 80s were the me decade, and everybody's got money, and there's money going everywhere, and tours are blowing up. CD sales were through the roof because they were so expensive. You know, but people are still buying them.
And people were replacing their cassettes and their vinyl. And
that's exactly what they were doing. So, names getting thrown around. Doug Pinnick, Brian Howe. So, Doug from King's X. Brian Howe from Bad Company, who replaced Paul Rodgers, right? John Farnham, just to name a few, right? But they settle on a guy from New Jersey. Not me. I know. Joe Lynn Turner, right? Former Rainbow vocalist. Easy for me to say. So this is what they're now calling the official Mark IV, right? Or excuse me, Mark V. I can't count. Yep. Roman numerals not good in my head. Okay. Quick as it was, though, Joe was forced out of the band, and the record company wanted Ian Gillan back in to go on the upcoming 25th anniversary tour. Why? Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Because nobody's going to pay to see him fronting those guys. So, back in, Blackmore wasn't a fan, but hey, you know, who says money can't buy you love? Because when they throw $250,000 in front of your face to say, go out on tour, what are you going to say? No?
Yeah. Okay, I'll go. I can make it work for one tour.
That's right.
Or can you?
However, you can't basically dump money on a creative mind. Right. So after a lot of arguments, Blackmore says, I'm gone. I am done. No more. You know, going to do my thing again. Okay. No problem. We'll hire Satriani.
Yeah, piece of cake. Satriani, consummate professional, had a blast on the tour. So much so that the band asked him to be a permanent member of the band, but he had his own thing going on. He was blowing up as well at this time on his solo project.
Surfing with the Alien.
Yeah. So he did not become the next member of the band to create the Mark VI lineup. That honor goes to Steve Morse.
Yes.
And so now with Mark VII version of the band, Morse, so I guess Satriani is Mark VI because he was in the band for a tour.
Yes.
Okay. So Satriani, Mark VI, Steve Morse, Mark VII, and they released several albums and another live album live at the Olympia, and they continued touring very successfully through the 90s and just on the band's name alone.
Yes.
Not even recording new music, just doing that retro tour thing. And bands still do it to this day.
They do.
Still do the retro tour. Just play the hits and give us your money.
Isn't there a band of 4 people that wear makeup that are riding that
pretty much
riding that for 10 years now? I don't know.
40 years now.
10, 4. When did Sonic Boom come? What was the last one? Sonic Boom?
Monsters.
See?
Yeah, something like that.
What year?
Yeah, a while back. Yeah, it's been a while.
I blame COVID.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
So then, fast forward to 2002, John Lord, being only one of 2 members to be in all incarnations of the band, announced his retirement.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, at that point, you've earned it.
You've been in the band, so 2002 from 68, so that's 44 years.
44 years, yeah.
Right? 2000, or 34 years. 34 years, right? I was told there would be no math.
78?
Anyhow, he's kept his mouth shut.
Okay.
Is it 44 or 34?
34.
Okay. So he's kept
Either way.
He's kept his mouth shut
Yeah.
for 3.5 decades.
4 years.
It's like, I'm done with all of you. See you later. Bye.
Yeah.
You couldn't blame him.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the most influential keyboardists and musicians around, and finding his replacement is going to be a challenge.
It's exactly. Now you have to think of it in terms of this. You've got band members, musicians, keyboardists that are in bands, right? Mm-hmm. And are they predominant players? There's a handful. Let's be honest.
Right.
Okay. You don't go to see Bon Jovi because Dave Bryan plays keyboards, right? And no knocking Bon Jovi and his current lineup, but let's face it, you don't.
Send your letters to RJ. No.
But you do go to see a band like Purple because, hey, that's John effing Lord up there. Mm-hmm. You know, very distinguished looking, very unique looking. You can't mistake him for anybody. So how do you find somebody to fill his shoes? Well,
like we said, it is a challenge, but they accepted the challenge and they found Don Airey.
Yes. Now, if you don't know who Don Airey is, do you know who Don Airey is?
No.
Okay. So Don Airey...
Keyboard player for Deep Purple?
Currently, yes. Good answer. But Don Airey has played in all of these different bands. He went on tour with Ozzy for years. And he's just been that go-to guy. If we need somebody on stage, let's get Don Airey. Because he's a classically trained pianist, etc., yada, yada, yada. So, hey, you know, if you're going to go to anybody, because now you've got a guy who's got the same experience, who's been through the same roads as John Lord, it's not a bad decision to make.
And now we go to Mark 8 lineup.
The Mark 8 lineup continues touring throughout the early 2000s, including a quick stop at the Live 8 concert, and they also went out and produced 2 more albums, releasing one very recently, right? Later in the decade, as album sales started declining, the debate was to either record or keep touring, as unlike album sales, right, ticket sales would still go through the roof. Again, like we were saying before, there's a legendary band that's still out there touring around. You know, let's go catch them before they die. You know, how many and I hate to say that because it's bad, but it's true. You know, I have seen a couple bands. It's like, yeah, I saw them before they died. You know, I saw Tom Petty 2 days before he died. Hello. Yeah. You know, it's like, you never know. I've seen U2 twice. Never mind. Whole other story. Anyway, so decision comes down, right, because they've been touring, right, that we're going to put a new record in the works. But again, you've been doing this for now we're in the 40 plus years, give or take. Yep. Who do you get to produce?
He's got to have been around.
Yep.
Experience with people who have been abused, have abused drugs.
Yep.
And been around the block and have egos and attitudes and knows how to manage that.
Prima donnas.
And was our boss for a short minute.
That's right.
We were talking about
the one and only Canadian producer extraordinaire, Bob Ezrin. Right?
Yeah.
So can you go wrong having Bob Ezrin behind the console?
I don't think so.
I don't think you can. And if you do, you were the one who screwed up, not him.
Yeah, I mean, Kiss, Alice Cooper, Pink Floyd. The list goes on and on and on and on.
It certainly does, but he's never done a Maiden record. I need him to get behind a Maiden record. That's a whole other story. Anyway, so Bob Ezrin comes in, right? Produces their record, right? Now what? Now, unfortunately, what has happened? John Lord has passed away in 2013. The music world is hit hard. A tribute album comes out of people playing homage to him. But the band must go on. So what do? They record yet another album because we got to do something. And so they do, right? So Purple's not done. They're not. Nope. Bringing Azrin again to do this album. Now, of course, we're here in 2020 and there's delays because of COVID.
Right.
But the album is finally released in 2020, right? And here's the kicker. In an interview given shortly after its release, Ian Gillan has said that the band has no plans to retire. Right? These guys are now in their 70s. I think Steve Morse is probably the youngest in the band. He's in his late 60s now. But how much longer can these guys keep going? Do you have to compare them to the Stones? It's like, well, screw it. If the Stones can do this, and they've been out.
We got to outlast the Stones, man.
Right.
But touring's not easy. At pretty much any age, living out of hotels and everything. And then as you get older, it just seems like it'd be harder and harder to keep up with that pace and the schedule.
Keep up with that pace.
See what I did? Yeah. So more power to them. If that's what you love and you want to do it that way, go for it.
Yeah. So when all of this is over and things seem to be easing, I hope they come out on tour here into the States and hopefully come here in Texas. Or there might be a road trip in our future so we can go see them. Because I hate to admit this, I have never seen Deep Purple.
Yeah, me either.
Out of all the bands and all the gin joints in all the world, I have never seen Deep Purple.
Yeah, me either.
Because they came to L.A. right when we left. Or when I left. Anyway, yeah. So, well, look, we could continue on. We're not going to. Metal Digest means a quick version. But in this case, you got to go a little deeper into the history of a band like this because...
Especially since their name is Deep Purple.
That's right. And because they have had such an influence on so many people. Everybody.
Just about everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we going to go this deep again?
Maybe. If there's a band that's been around this long, you might have to take a little bit longer with those. But if the band hasn't been around as long, we can maybe skip certain areas. But
we'll see.
But yeah.
We'll see.
But thanks for joining us on this very first episode of the AJ and RJ Show. So this podcast edition.
Episode 1, Volume 1? Volume 1,
Season
episode
1.
Season 1, Episode 1?
Season
01.
Episode 01.
Whatever it is.
001?
Yeah.
01.
Still there would be no math. Sorry.
I'm AJ Motts.
I'm RJ Stone.
This is the AJ and RJ Show.
Peace to you.